How's it going, everyone? I'm Tim Zanoni with the Shadow Consciousness Podcast. Today we have Adam on. Adam's been in the spiritual space for a long time now, and I got to meet him through men's work. And he's a fucking smart dude. He's awesome, has a lot of wisdom. Sometimes it's beyond me. I would say a lot of times because he's
Ah,
on it.
I could say the same about you, man. Let's throw that right back at you.
Yeah. So, Adam, why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about yourself and what you've
Yeah.
been doing lately?
Well, first off, man, thanks for having me here. It was really heartwarming to see the invitation, and also just got so excited when you reached out and told me about this new handle that you created and these conversations that you're creating and having. And I'm excited to be here with you and see where our conversation takes us. And
Yeah.
yeah, I also just want to say, like, to your audience, to Tim's audience, being in my first men's group together, I think that may have been yours. I don't remember. Arc of Brotherhood. Shout out to the Arc of Brotherhood. Um, Tim, you also would really blow my mind with your insights on life. And I was with Tim for about a year and a half. And we both got to witness each other really step into our voices, which has been powerful, which really connects to what is the thing that lights me up. Like over the course of these past 2 years, um, is finding my voice, or continuing to find my voice, and know myself deeper. Because one of the things that we were getting into prior to starting this, Tim was asking me potentially about a dark night of the soul. And one of my longest dark nights of the soul, which I feel like I'm just emerging from, is the journey of realizing I don't really know myself. To
Mm.
all right, let's go into it. And I've been on that journey, like, unaware at the age of 27, and now about 10 years later, I feel closer to who I am, and it's been the thing that lights me up the most. Because yeah, as we know, as we might know, maybe you can relate.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's kind of weird too, and sometimes I feel weird saying it. It's like, know thyself. And
Right.
especially because there's a lot of people that are like, they can hear this and they can hear this conversation, be like, I fucking know myself. What are you talking
Yeah.
about? But like, do you?
Yeah.
And I'm not like throwing like shade towards anybody on
Yeah.
this topic or anything, but you only know yourself as far as your pain will take you and far as you'll let your pain take you. And I've seen you go through a lot of shit, and prevail, man.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and it's not like to reflect on that or to add to it, or even to agree with you, because I was that person. I was in complete denial before I met you. Maybe about 2 months before, 3 months before you, I thought I was like not perfect, but like I didn't have any bullshit. I was just like, oh, I'm a happy guy. I'm good. I don't need to do anything. Like a little story on that, because I use this story to remind myself who where I was. And my wife and I were watching this reality show on like self work, and a group of people
Mm.
that go to do healing, and they're talking about wearing masks. And I got kind of in a heated feeling when my wife was like, "Hey, what mask do you wear?" I was like, "I don't have any masks. I'm fine." Like, it like triggered me, and I was in complete denial. So it's wild. It's a wild thing, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we don't think we have masks. I mean, we've been living our life, and we just and this mask that we put on, it's not like you just like all of a sudden have this fucking wall up, you
Yeah.
know. It's a
No. Yeah.
constant additive, and it
Yeah.
starts at such a young age,
Yeah.
but it just keeps getting on until you're in this identity of yourself, or this false self that
Yeah.
you think you are.
Yeah.
And the only way that people can get back to it is just honestly stillness. And I've
Yes.
noticed in myself that if I can just calm everything down like everything in this world is a fucking distraction if you think about it. Everything, even this conversation we're having right now, as much as I fucking love it, it is a distraction from connecting with myself. The only thing I can do to fully connect with myself is honestly lock myself in a black room for hours. Because, you know, that's where I fucking feel the shit. You know, that's where I feel like my true self, and those thoughts and like everything else and the stresses of my everyday life, you know, those fade away. And I start actually feeling who I am.
And what are you doing in that time? Like, are you just sitting, like, is it meditation? It's just like, I would love to hear more about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it can be anything that comes up. A lot of
Yeah.
times it's sadness. I've noticed in myself that I've negated a lot of my emotions at such a young age. I think I self-regulated so early on
Yeah.
because I was a very highly sensitive person. So watching my parents, I could tell when my father was stressed out or my mother was
Right.
not happy. So I had to self-regulate, and I was a part. And my family, I have a lot of siblings, and I always was considered like the responsible one. I feel like I still might be, which is silly to me, but um, and it's just because I learned to self-regulate so early, which is it's not a good thing, you know.
Yeah.
It's an adaptive measure that I took at such a young age, where instead of being able to cry when I felt sad,
Yeah.
I knew that it would add stress to my
Right.
parents.
Right.
So I regulated it into not expressing my emotions. So a lot of times when I'm sitting with myself, sadness comes up and I don't know why. And I
Yeah.
don't know what the sadness is. And sometimes
Wow.
it's not important to, like, you know, name it. I've really helped myself to just feel
Yep.
instead of like trying to figure out where's the
Wow.
sadness coming from, what trauma is this, what can
Yeah.
I fucking do now. A lot of times I'm just like, man, I just want to let myself feel this, you know, because I never allowed myself to.
See, that's what I'm talking about. When it comes to, well, one, we have a, I forget, you're like 20, not to make it about age, but coming into a space with you, I think when we met, you were 27, right? So you're probably 29 right now. And even when I met James, the leader of the men's group that we were in, the one that I believe Tim is still in. Yeah, you're still with those guys. James would reflect back to me. He's like, wow, like, I wish, it's cool. You can see these like 5 to 10 year separation between consciousness and like generations. And what you're expressing and sharing right now is something that, in terms of another aspect that excites me the most, what I'm witnessing in 2023 more so than ever is actually just allowing it to be. And
Yeah.
I was feeling you on that, like comes with this sadness or whatever emotion it might be. I've been trying to be, maybe it's like a wounded masculine thing where I'm trying to solve, like, what is this? Like, let's get to the bottom of it. Like, I need to understand this. Like, I need to be able to like write a paper about it and define it. And now I've let go of that and realized that that was something that's for me, and it seems like for you, and I think for the human race.
A lot of men, especially.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for everybody, but
Right.
the more I stepped in, but I really do believe it. The more I stepped into just allowing it to feel, just to feel the deeper, the healing, the actually more at peace I have become with myself. So I love that, man. That's another big thing that I've been really getting lit up about this year.
Yeah, and like, to segue into that, like, if you don't mind sharing, what has been some of the dark nights that you've like prevailed from? Because I know there's been plenty, and I
for
know, and
sure.
I want to just hear your insight on also, like, your perspective on how that is almost necessary in growth, as well as how it has really given you a different outlook, whatever that outlook is.
Yeah, no, it's big. I see these dark nights as initiations for me. And yeah, I see them as initiations. The first one that I was speaking of, I actually wasn't aware of it. I mean, I was, but I didn't. For me, when I first learned about like what a dark night of the soul is, maybe about 2 years ago, the first dark night of the soul that I identified with, which is something that I'm also still going through was the estrangement of my family of origin. And that for me was like front of line, and I've been focusing on that. But parallel to this, I've learned in my reality that it's possible to have maybe multiple dark nights of the soul going on. And I had this longer one that I didn't really know about in terms of a definition for it. I was more living in it. And this year I became like more unstuck. I feel like at 27, I started to sense this unknowing of who I was. And I felt like I was, I was just stuck. I was just really stuck chasing busyness. I know you mentioned we'll talk about music, but in terms of what I do is, I work with music, I teach music, and I was just really unhappy with even the things that I succeeded in with music. Awesome gigs that I had, amazing collaborations, amazing students. And ultimately, I quickly saw that even when we were together, I had one of my tracks go viral on TikTok, and it sprouted this hashtag dance competition on TikTok where people are like have this synchronized dance, and you have all like thousands of people using this thing. And I wasn't happy. I couldn't enjoy it. And I realized I wasn't really truly enjoying my life. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't just like just down all the time, but I felt inside like a void. I knew there was something more. And I would say this year I just emerged from this unknowing. And I feel like I'm finally feeling the 2 years of hard work, of inner self work, of really shedding some tears, really shedding some pain, reaching plateaus, crashing back down, coming back up. So this one for me, this long one to like wrap it up is one of the most exciting ones because I'm actually seeing the other side of it, and the thing that I can say that brought me like this initiation was, I know we talked about it already, but it was really knowing myself, like knowing who I am, allowing myself to feel all the feels, the good, bad, ugly, amazing, beautiful. The mind's an interesting place. And the other one, which was being estranged from my family, that one, for me, I felt like really catapulted my ability to maybe get to this longer one faster, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, like just to tie that up, and that was a bit, but it was wild to see that, for me to experience that. I'm just curious, have you ever, in your experience with Dark Night of the Soul, do you feel like you've experienced multiple, maybe more than multiple at the same time?
Like shedding of myself.
Yeah, just like different movements of these things. I see them coming. I guess for me, I just saw it evolve from when I first saw. But yeah, man.
Yeah, I mean the first one, it's always the hardest for sure. You don't know what the fuck's going on first off.
Yeah.
And you don't know if it's ever going to end, and it can lead to super depressive states. But
yes.
Yeah, I do agree that once they come and once you can see the light, that when they come again, you know that it's first off, there is going to be a light, and that light's amazing.
Yeah.
When you get to that, when you get through that, you just see things a lot more clearer, because it's almost like shedding a part of yourself that it was a hurt part that was there for a reason to get you through life. Whether it doesn't matter what age, it was there for a reason. But it's holding you back, and so once that's shed, that clarity is unmatched. So now when you're going in it again, there's going to be an end, and you also can dig into it a lot quicker too.
Yeah. Yes. That's one of my favorite things about it. Is ability to
almost like welcome it.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
You're like, oh shit, I'm about to go through some shit. Let's fucking
Yeah.
go.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah, you had a couple things in there too. You had the family enmeshment, which I
Yeah.
think a lot of people listening could or couldn't understand, and I have an opinion on this, and so does a lot of people. But our family, even we're born into them, but a lot of people think because we're born into our families that we owe them something for or anything. And I'm not saying, like, I love my family, but
Yeah.
sometimes that's all they're there for, is just to be that family, to bring you into this earth and show you some things. And that's that. But our family enmeshment is super crucial in our life, because those are the people that are around us the most. So they have built up probably around the most love, but also probably the most hurt that we experience growing up. And so, yeah, I would like, if you don't mind, I would like you to speak a little bit more to how that experience was for you, because it's hard to kind of be able to see it from a clearer perspective, and not just being like, I know I owe my family something, or I need to be this for them,
Yeah.
instead of looking what your actual needs are.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. And from it's, I mean, first off, the thing that's really, and I'll keep it on path, but I've been just really getting, well, through my wife, who's been getting deep into human design and astrology, there's been some just incredible information in those mappings for myself that more or less hint at exactly what I'm going through, which is coming into this world with a very deep family wound. And it was a wild experience. And I know, as like, I feel like I can speak for a lot of people, especially those who might come from bigger families. For me, and I see it. You see it out in the world, this pressure to show up for your family, and whatever degree that might look like. And yeah, 0 to 7 people. That's the only people you know. Like, they're gonna, it's like they're gonna have an impact on you. And with my childhood, it was very, I'm not gonna say different, but my family really had this like image. It was really good at gathering. We would feed and host my mother and father sides of the family. So I had this very strong image, and part of my mother's astrology is to really, look into the future to build something. And she was really wanting to build this close family. But underneath everything, there was a lot of, like a lot of distortions, a lot of pain, unspoken pain that my family of origin could not speak of. And although we would eat food and break bread and gather people, beyond eating food, there really wasn't that much. Once the pain of those topics would come up, there was no room for that. Regardless, I thought that I owed my family something. I thought I had to, like, in the back of my mind, I thought I would forever have to show up to every single family gathering. Like, I created this pressure for myself, which is really interesting. And in a lot of ways, this for me, I mentioned the long dark night of the soul, but this one really feels like my first one, because I was conscious of it. I started to realize what was going on. This one really propelled me into realizing, like, that is not who I am, actually. I'm not here to serve my family and just be fixed to this group of people because I feel like I have a debt to show up exactly how they want it. It doesn't change. I love my family, absolutely love them. And we grew up together as we should have. And I'm grateful that we, stayed together in our traumatic way, I guess. I don't know. I mean, it made me the man I am now, like, in terms of acceptance. I fucking love that my family story blew up in my face, it was all meant to happen, because the stuff that happened as a child, it cut off my voice, you know, and it wasn't until I removed myself from my family of origin where I really got to find myself.
Yeah.
It was painful. It was painful, excuse me. And the thing that I love the most is, I've never read the Bible, but someone dropped this biblical line. Maybe you can help me with it. It's about the trees, you know, for the tree to reach the branches to reach the heavens, the roots have to be, you know, descended to hell. And the more I work on myself, the deeper into the hell of myself, or I don't even want to say hell, because it's just the dark side.
Right.
And the dark for me now is more beautiful, as you said.
Right.
You're like, yeah, let's do this. I know there's something to learn behind this, like, this pain. Yeah, and just to like bring it back to you, or, you know, open up the space. For me, the enmeshment, I think when you're in community with people, it's inevitable.
Right.
But I see family estrangement. I honestly think it's going to be more something that's going to happen over time. I think the family structures are changing, and we're realizing just because we came the blood, like this tribal blood thing, it's not, we didn't grow up. We're not like nomadic people anymore. We're in the world. It's highly complex. We're able to connect with maybe people that relate to us more. And it's hard to break away from that if you grew up in a family like me. And it really kept my personality. For the type of person I am, the demands of my family really didn't allow me to become like who I truly am. And yeah, so it's been a wildly painful ride, but I'm so grateful for it. So grateful for it.
Yeah, I mean, that you can tell from that enmeshment that, you know, your family, it just shows the uncomfortability that was held from if somebody's not okay with you being like essentially you know.
Yeah.
And it just shows, because I see it all the time, especially with men. It's like, you know, you always want to, I mean, you always have that nice guy side of you. A lot of men do.
Yeah. Oh,
And that side of me, you know, I want to make sure things are balanced, and I'll sacrifice a lot of myself to make sure that others are happy.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot to be able to be like, no, I don't feel like doing that. And they might project onto you that this shit is like on you for either breaking up the family or you taking your own time.
Yeah.
But it just shows the hurt that they're coming from, you know?
Yeah. No, it's hard. You know, for me, I get, I don't know if it's Connor Beaton or he's quoting someone else, but like, you know, growth never comes without pain or something like that, or discomfort. It's just the nature of this world. You know, it's just that's how it is.
Right. There's no growth without discomfort.
Yeah, I mean, I do have moments. One of the biggest things that has also catapulted my growth is being married and being in a relationship. There are things that I do believe through. There is growth opportunity in the light. Like some, you know, like it doesn't feel like it's the majority. It does feel like the majority is dark. Right. And I've had little glimpses of what that could feel like or what that could look like. But I do realize I got more time. I got a lot more time. You brought up Mr. Nice Guy. You know, we didn't read that one together. We read Way of Superior Man. But I read that book 2 years ago. And yeah, that would be a big character I'm still confronting and still you know, working on and still falling into that. That's a big part of my identity that I've actually maybe am able to handle now, like actually work through, which has been pretty awesome, pretty hilarious. It's fun when you can start laughing at yourself and you're like, oh, I'm doing that thing, man. Like rather than why am I angry? What's going on? It's like, oh, I did that thing.
Yeah. You can get lost in it though too. You'd be like, oh shit, what wound's coming up for me right now? Oh my god, I'm coming through abandonment to him, or I'm coming through
Yeah.
unloved him.
Yeah.
And so
Yes.
it kind of it's kind of a mind fuck, because it's nice to be able to label it, but at the same time you can get caught in that too instead of just feeling.
Forget it. I've been doing some powerful one-on-one work, and we're almost done with the container, almost 8 months. And in the beginning, this man's name is Xavier Dagba. And in the beginning, he's like, what if all these pieces, I broke up my identity, my inner child, my teen, like all these, my shadow, my saboteur, he's like, what if all these pieces were just you? And I was like, what? Like, just, it's like, no, I can't do that, man. This is working for me, this system of like categorizing every wound or part of me. And now I'm just like, okay, I get that question. Like, this is just me, and maybe it's this thing that happened. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's because I didn't eat any food, or like my blood sugar is low. The point I'm trying to say is, as we said before, it's like now I've kind of put myself together. I mean, I'll still break myself apart, but I find more grace and more beauty and more light when it comes to just feeling, without needing to be like, it's this, it's that, it's this thing. Right. That's been like led me to the thing that I'm working on the most recently is trying to lead with my body, rather than my head. And as Tim knows, I'm very cerebral, and trying to lead with like physical feelings of my body rather than the thoughts of my head. And that's been a pretty wild journey.
Yeah. I mean, easier said than done. I feel like guys, especially, they just want to get from point A to point B. And a lot of times they're like, okay, is somebody not happy with me? Okay, what can I do physically? What can I do to make this better? And that can bring in, that's especially in romantic relationships and partnerships too. A lot of men are just doing things for their partner. And that's a lot easier, and providing, and that's a lot easier for men to do than just sitting still and being vulnerable with your partner. That takes a lot of fucking work, and the guys don't want to do that. They'd rather go work a 12-hour day out in the field, just hot sun, and bring some money home, and hopefully your wife's just pleased with that, instead of them asking you questions about how your day was.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But it just speaks volumes to where we're at, and where a lot of men are hurting. It's self-regulating, like I said. It's also just not showing emotion is taught so early too. And so if we can just ball up, go to work, and not feel, a lot of times that's just all what men want, but it's not what they need. And it's not. And then once you realize that it's not what you need, that's when you're like, oh shit, I have been living this lie, because that brings us full circle again to what a lot of men go through. When I say like I was living this false self, a lot of men are like, I know myself, but you don't know yourself because you haven't even dug in. Like, when's the last time you've cried? Like, when's the last time you sat still? Like, actually sat still and not thought about what's going to go on for tomorrow, or when is my next work day, or what needs to be done around the house. Actually sat still and being like, man, what am I feeling right now? Like, what emotions are coming up? And that's a tough part. And that's when you know yourself,
Yeah, it is. And I love the comparison to like the physical. You have to say work can't be mental, but I can relate and still relate depending on my mood. Like, I would rather go work for 12 hours somewhere else, not say a thing, than have a hard conversation for like 15 minutes, It's wild. It's wild. However, living that life, when I was living in New York City, my wife and I were living together, and we were separate for our jobs. And that, it was like thriving on that separation, that busyness, and just getting lost in my work, they're still deep inside, even though maybe on the short side, I would rather work the 10 hours and have that conversation. The long game, it's like cancer, man. Or for me, it's like cancer. It's just like eating away. 6 years I stayed just kind of hustling this one job and music and things like that. I mean, that was another crazy thing, is realizing I used music to really keep myself away from myself. That was a really wild arrival that I came through, working through all of this stuff. You know, because music's supposed to be this,
Right.
you know, this beautiful thing, which it is, but realizing I used it to escape doing that work. But being confused while I was making the music. So it had to come out. It had to come out. And I think, yeah, when it has to come out, it's hard. It's hard. I was not ready. That's the other thing. So going back to this initiation, this black soul, dark night of the soul, being estranged from my, 34 years of my life, very strong identity, big Greek family, Astoria, Queens, which is, was the second largest Greek population after Greece for a long time. So it's just like cousins everywhere. That estrangement is the thing that, like, really, let's just say it forced me to face myself. And that was it, because prior to that, I did not have it in me. I was in such denial, I was so unwilling to look at whatever it was. I didn't even know where to start. And when you're talking about where men are now, it's, I actually thought self-work was for weak people.
Right.
When I was younger, when I was in my teens, mid-20s, early 20s, excuse me, I thought anyone who needed a therapist, like, I didn't understand that. I actually judged it and looked down on it. And now it's like my life is going into this. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get it, man. Yeah. That's crazy. And then I've been in awe of seeing not only your evolution as a person, but also seeing your evolution in music too. And just like you said, you were doing it, and music is such a beautiful thing, but you were almost doing it to escape from yourself and hide away. And now, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but we talked a little bit about this. You had a lot of meshment with music, in a sense that you were using it as an identity first off, and you were also using it as an acceptance, with mainstream media, trying to get what they wanted out of it so that you can feel accepted from it.
Yeah. I mean, it's no, and just to bring it back to our childhood and these, the 0 to 7, and maybe for people that are new to this, because when I learned about the 0 to 7, how 0 to 7 has such a profound impact on who we are, the smallest experience can rupture and turn and be traumatic as a child. And as a child, my learning disabilities really isolated me. From 0 to 7, I was removed, put into smaller classrooms, and had all this shame around feeling, the public school system categorized me as stupid. And that really impacted the way my self-worth and what I believed in myself. Although I started playing the piano at 8 years old, that wound of feeling stupid really is something that I'm still working through, and maybe finally gotten to the other end of it, where I'm like, oh, I'm not stupid. That was like, that's school and this weird system that is changing right now for the better. The reason I'm bringing this up is music as a child was the first place I got recognition in my life. I had a natural talent for it. And I have vivid memories of different music teachers, specifically piano and guitar, that would pull my parents aside and say, hey, your son's like, he's doing really well. I'm actually really impressed with him. So as a child, it was the first thing that I associated. Like I got like a society anointed me. It's when you have pain, I'm realizing when you don't accept yourself, you look for acceptance in the outer world desperately. And you're not going to really get it because you got to accept yourself first. You have to love yourself first. Cliche, classic thing, but it's fucking true, man. It's so true.
Yeah.
I couldn't really intimately love my wife because I didn't really intimately love myself. And now the more I love myself, the more our love has grown so deep. So with that wound from childhood, I needed to have my success, my identity be defined by the metrics of, getting signed to a label, getting things licensed, gigs, whatever, tours, collaborations, features and whatever, like PR, public relationships, all of this stuff, man. And that's why I brought it to this, like, finally, this thing that I wanted, which was like lots of listens, something that strikes in the moment. This remix that I co-produced became the eighth most Shazam song in the world. It actually charted on Ukraine and Russia. I thought that was like, not to throw shade at those countries, but there's a lot of click farms. I actually thought it wasn't legit. I thought it was like some weird hack thing based on like all the shit with the elections, but it was legit. And I didn't care. And it was just this illumination that nothing I can do in the physical world in terms of recognition, it's not going to mean anything to me if I don't really love myself. And you hear it. And now here's this moment where I get, for like a period of time, this awesome ripple in the world. And I knew right then and there, like, nothing matters. Nothing matters beyond really being truly connected with yourself. And then that's where everything is beautiful. Now I look back to that time and I got to celebrate it. I was like, that's fucking awesome. This track, I can go on to TikTok, type in Batu-K and see some wild videos that people made to this thing. So that was it. Like, trying to get this recognition, chasing something, getting stuff, but ultimately it wasn't for me, because I wasn't happy. Let's just say that. Yeah. I wasn't happy. I didn't know what was going on. And what was going on was I was running from myself, running from my shadow, which, fuck, like, yeah, it's hard to know you have a shadow, Yeah. That's why we call it a shadow.
Yeah. Yeah. I had another thing for you. Why do you feel like, so with your enmeshment that you had in this music industry, and this acceptable wound that you have, why do you feel like, this might be a big one, but why do you feel like a lot of men associate this acceptance from society? Also, it's also associated with money, if you can, and that recognition, and why it's so huge for men to get that.
It is a big question, and I feel like the first place I go is just the conditioning of masculinity, or the role of the impact of the patriarchy, beyond just it being men, but rather it's this force, this expectation. For me, I'll bring it to my first shadow work course. You did it as well, I think. We did the same one with Connor Beaton. That's where I started to really learn about the masculine wound, or these kind of like the 5 Ps, one of them being like the provider. And if you support the archetypes of masculinity, it's to provide. So I could speak for myself. Anytime I feel like, being very sensitive or really working on the stuff that happened to me as a child, anytime I feel like an inkling of that I'm not providing in the right way, I associate, like, my whole identity crumbles or would crumble.
Right.
And I would feel like I'm nothing, like I'm a failure. I have nothing to contribute. Why we do that, I feel like it's a deep generations and generations. And in the larger scheme of things, I also think it is related. I mean, it is generational, but the father maybe you came from, or even the mother wound. But seeing the shadow's early wounds, I started to see, oh wow. First, I'm not like this crazy guy. So I used to think, what's wrong with me, man? Like, why did that just kill my identity? Like, I didn't cut something right, or like, to bring it to sometimes really simple things, to see the largeness. That's when there's something big there. When I would feel that my self-worth is threatened by my lack of ability to provide, that's when I know there's something there. Yeah, I think for me, it was my family conditioning, and then the larger masculine wound from the generations since we started moving from farms to the cities, as Dr. Glover would talk about. That's when the father was removed from the system and started going to the city, and he was gone. Yeah, it's a wild thing. What about you? Like, what would you?
Well, the first thing I thought of when you said you felt like a failure, I'm like, you almost feel like a failure as a man too. Like, you lose your identity almost as a man.
Yes.
If you don't fit that protector and provider archetype, then what are you essentially? Yeah. So when I heard failure, I heard failure as a man.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of men think that way too. If they can't provide for their family,
yes,
then they're doing something wrong. And and it puts a lot of stress on a person. It puts a lot of strain on a person to feel like they're always under, like, that needle, to constantly be there and be that space for everyone else around them. And it doesn't have to be just your family, but it's providing in all areas of your life, being that better person. It leaves like very little room for error, and that's what it feels like. But I mean, there's a lot of fucking room for error, but we don't want to feel that.
Yeah.
And so it hurts. And I'm not saying that men shouldn't be providers either. I think that's like a thing that men need to hold, but it's a beautiful thing, and it can be shared though too. A lot of times we don't think it can be shared. A lot of times we think that we're just alone with it.
Yeah.
But we have a partner for a reason, and they're there to support as much as they can.
Yeah.
And the men too. That's one thing I've been trying to hit on the most with this channel is just men supporting men. Because a lot of times, I'll say this, one thing I've taken the most out of men's work is that we are going through a lot of the same shit.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we can live across the fucking world, but the deep down feelings of the pressure of what it feels like that you feel like you need to be something for others is always there for every man,
Yeah. No, it's man, yeah. I mean, it's cool, like, not cool, but I appreciate bringing it to like highlighting men's work, because in terms of that pre-wake up time, I would have never wanted to do men's work,
right?
Be vulnerable with men, hang out in a men's circle. That for me seems so far-fetched. I forget what it is, the masculine and feminine wound, but I really preferred hanging out as a teenager, middle school to high school. I preferred hanging out with girls. And I didn't really confine. I wasn't close to, I had male friends, but we weren't close. You know, we could, you know, it was surface stuff. Beautiful, you know, beautiful friendships, but nothing raw, nothing as in like this conversation, something
Right.
like this. And it's being and doing men's work now. I see, you know, we see, you hear it often. It's actually something I didn't really see until I would start to hear how male figures are portrayed, like in The Simpsons or so you know, like television shows. You have this like weak, confused man who's being dominated by a woman, or it's just seeing this kind of like lost man being this archetype of a lost man being represented in pop culture. And now when I go out, like I look at I'm like, damn, like there's a lot. As you said, it's a lot. It's a lot. And I look at men differently. You
Yeah.
know, as this brother, you know, of a man who, oof, it's tough. It's hard. And I guess for me, what's really hard is when you're doing it, you think everyone is doing it and that like men have stepped up finally and we're all doing it. And then when I step out of my men's work bubble and maybe tap into like a larger, you know, podcast, and women are like talking to men being like, yeah, there's really not, or men talking to women on a podcast saying like, there's not still, it's still not that many men.
Yeah.
And then I get the reality of like, okay, shit, this is like kind of new, or not new, but it's still small percentage. And ultimately there's a lot of pain amongst men.
For
Like,
sure.
it's crazy. Like you get into those numbers, like the deaths, the suicides, like the numbers are there in deaths. Like that's the ultimate measurement of seeing the suffering. It's crazy.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And also that like level of comfortability that men like to sit in. I'll say if you can find that like sweet spot, I shouldn't say sweet spot, but it's that spot that it's that coasting spot.
Yep.
That's an easy spot to be, honestly.
Yes.
You don't know any better. You don't know what life can be. You don't know it can be sweeter.
Yeah.
And to get to that sweeter spot, it's gonna be fucking hard. It's really just like, are you willing to put in the work to get to that spot? Because you can numb and you can do a lot of shit to just avoid for the rest of your life. But then there, you know, there's your life that you live, that you were supposed to come on this earth to do something. Everybody in this, every being was supposed to come, every divine soul was supposed to come on this earth and learn a lesson and be something, you know? And that's what like I always think about. I'm like, man, it's fucking hard, but am I coming here to do exactly what I was supposed to be doing? I don't want to be a regress soul. I want to keep evolving and I want to keep experiencing life. And the more I keep having that thought in my head, the more I'm like, fuck, man, life is so beautiful, but it's so quick too. You think 70 years is long, but I think of like, what about like 70 summers, you know, 80 summers? That doesn't seem like that long,
Yeah.
you know? I'm like,
That
fuck,
just flipped it for me. Yeah.
yeah, I have 70 summers left.
Yeah.
That's not that many summers, you
Yeah.
know? And I want to be able to leave this earth better for myself and better for everyone that I was involved with. And I want to experience it too, you know? The times when I'm really still with myself and can be like present, and I mean really present. Like I can be some of these dark nights, you know, I can be insanely sad, but when I can bring the clarity of presence around, that sadness goes away because I can see like the green grass growing. I can see the animals around. And it's gonna sound cliche, but you know, it's so beautiful. It's so wild, like the stillness that can come to you, and you're like, holy shit.
Oh yeah. It
Yeah.
is. It is a holy shit. Because
It
there's
is.
so much. There's so much there. There's so much there. There's so much. I'm coming. Yeah, 2023. Of course, there's more to go. There's more to peel. There's more to discomfort. More I know there's gonna be more of like maybe the craziest things of Dark Nights is my identity did unravel to a point where I just really didn't know. Like I was just completely no direction. It was just like a, no compass. I know there's more of that, but being with it and seeing, it's kind of like I describe it now as I have, at least for now, a better grasp of my tides, like the flow of movement, of energies, of the ups and the downs, and really how to ride with them with more grace, and even more excitement. I just finished a book called Emotional Intimacy by Robert Augustus Masters, and it's about emotional intimacy. And he breaks down the scope of emotions, and the ones he doesn't like to call any emotion negative. He actually believes there's no negative emotions. So like with fear and anger and guilt and shame or envy, all of them can be used to help. They're all actually there to guide us. Every single thing, the whole scope. And the more I lean into that, the more I can see fear as like a guide that's going to lead me to something better. It's,
yeah.
Sometimes, of course, I'll go back to it and, sink back into things, and it might, I might, of course, stumble as a human being, but I feel now that I've been walking this path, I have more optimism in my life. I was very pessimistic. I was very, very bleak about what the hell I was doing. I just wasn't that happy. Yeah. It's like surface happiness, but like deep down inside, I knew there was something more, and it's this conversation right here. It's like, it's profound. It's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, that's, to close it up, I would just say that a lot of, it's like a compass that was broken for you, but to bring into that back when you were going through the dark night of yourself, that the best compass that I'd say a lot of people, if you're getting into this work for the first time, especially men, is starting to recognize every little aspect that comes up for you. If you watch a video and you get pissed off, like actually like figure out, why did I just get pissed off at that? If you have somebody cut you off in the lane in like driving, why did I just get pissed off at this person? And it's not as simple as saying, because this person's an asshole, and he cut me off. It's not. It's do you feel like you weren't seen right there? Do you feel like that person is better than you, or that you were just a spot on the side of the road that they just didn't care about? Like why actually are you pissed off? And I'd say, like, and that goes where any emotion, every single emotion that people go through is fucking a compass to your soul. And it's going to show you the shit that you hide and that you project on others too, and that would be my advice to leave it at.
No, and just to like being with this car, road rage, whatever it may be, like I had these little pillars of checking myself, whether it's the car or even my two cats. Like in the morning, sometimes one of them is just very demanding, or even just things like with my wife. Like I will know, I'm like, oh shit, I'm like in this area. What I've noticed, and it is that compass, I'm like, I feel like if I self-abandon myself, I have like this delay lag time of like 1 to 2 days. It could be that day of where like maybe I overextended myself in a situation that I didn't respect myself. And now 2 days later, I'm driving, or like I'm not attending myself, and then I see a buildup. Those are those signs where I'm like, all right, where am I not listening to myself? Because that's when I find, it's not always, as we said, like sometimes we can't just like define the road rage, whether it's the person, I self-abandoned myself, or for me, I'm hungry, or really low blood sugar is a killer for me. Like that's a silent killer for me. If I eat a lot of sweets the day before, I'll have this crash. I just need an apple. And maybe that's older. Maybe once you're 36, not to say much older, but that's something I'm more sensitive to these days. But man, Tim, it's been such a pleasure, brother. Such a pleasure, man.
Thanks for coming on, Adam.
Dude.
I'm sure everybody appreciate it.
Oh, I really appreciate it too. And yeah, I'm glad we made it happen. And I can't wait to see this all unfold and the other men that you bring onto your channel. So yeah, man.